Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Okay. So I am so happy to be here, and thank you so much for getting up early on your gloomy Saturday morning to join me. I'm here to talk to you about defending creativity. So first, I'll introduce myself a little bit more. My name is Stephanie Sheldon. I've been in Cleveland for 10 years, so I can officially call myself a Clevelander. But when I showed up to that city, it was, excuse me, just very depressed. People were just constantly like, why would you ever move here? And I was like, why do people like hate themselves so much, right? So, because like I was like coming to this city and I'm just like, this is a really cool city. Like these bridges are cool. This river is cool. Like, I just kind of was like seeing the overwhelming opportunity and positivity. And you know how that feels, right? Even like yourself, you're like sometimes question. You see yourself too often. And someone sees you, they're like, you're really cool. And you're like, wait, am I? So Cleveland was really going through that situation. And I was like, oh, this is perfect for me. So anyway, I moved to Cleveland 10 years ago. And I kind of struggled to find my place there for a little while because the creative community was not very well networked, and it was really kind of hard to find other people that were doing creative, cool things to kind of provide some support. And so I just decided to start something myself. So anyway, when I got an email asking me to speak here today, like my heart just kind of was like, oh, it kind of swelled. And, but then of course, right. My brain was like, well, what if you fail at this talk? Or what if nobody cares what you have to say? And also, why would anybody listen to you? And I was just like, okay, thanks, brain. You're like a super friend of mine. That's really nice of you. So I just honestly had to be like, shut the fuck up. And that's a little bit about what I'm going to talk to you about today. So defending creativity is a constant battle with yourself and with the world. I want you to walk away here understanding that you're not alone. It's both easier and harder than you think, probably, to do what you want to do, but you can do whatever it is that you would like to do. So, good question. Why would anybody want to listen to me? Honestly, my brain gave me my first talking point, so it was like actually doing me good service. As I was saying earlier, I'm the founder of Cleveland Flea, and Cleveland Flea is a 6-figure business that builds strong businesses and puts millions into our local economy every year. This is a powerhouse business, and that's one of the reasons I think people do like to hear from me is because it's very successful. I don't get all of that money myself, but the Flea generates a significant amount of money, and this year we're on track to make $1 million. That's really unheard of in terms of like what I thought it would happen, but it all really has to do with how I think and how I make decisions. I also run Indie Foundry, which is where I work with other $1 million makers, those independent founders who are focused on making money and making a really big impact in the world. I started something called Creative Clubhouse this year, which is where we help our dreamers build their best biz or live their best life through events, coaching, and community. A little bit different than our founders of companies because they're like the baby founders of companies before they've graduated into making $1 million. And then I just recently opened, actually hasn't even officially opened, but it will be opening this week, the Wes Anders Inn, right? I know. So the Wes Anders Inn, if anybody is familiar with Wes Anderson, they'll get this joke, but, well, it's not a joke, but the name is, but it's a creative staycation spot right by Lake Erie for nurturing your creative spirit. But yes, I'm obsessed with Wes Anderson, his movies, and I just couldn't pass up the opportunity when I was deciding what my business name would be for my Airbnb to call it the Wes Anders Inn. And every room is decorated based on a female character from one of the movies who I really admire, and just their quotes and their style. And like, if Susie was in Cleveland at this location, how would she decorate this room? If you're a Susie, you would take that room. If you're a Margot, you probably want the other room. Maybe you're a Rita. Like, it's just a really funny way to think about design. So all four of these businesses kind of, to me, encapsulate what a creative entrepreneur might need to build for themselves and to be successful. So for me right now, that starts with a brand that makes sense in the world, but also draws inspiration from a courageous and passionate founder. So to me, that's the difference between like a brand that is super unique and authentic, and one that you feel is like, you can kind of see right through. Like it kind of is, it's not really digging deep or internally for its internal kind of course or mission, and it's sort of taking from other places, and you can kind of tell that usually. So your brand needs to be strong. You also need to learn to become a boss who takes seriously the learning required to grow your creative endeavor. And I don't mean you need to be a boss and have a ton of employees, but you still need to have a boss mentality, which is like, I'm going to learn to be the best at all the things that honestly I don't want to learn how to do, right? Like, I was kind of a brat about learning QuickBooks, but like when I learned it, it kind of made my life a lot easier. So like enabling yourself to kind of grow up in those ways and take on the things that you really need to make your business successful is becoming a boss. A creative community that assures you're not alone in the struggles that you face, and also helping you celebrate the victories that come your way. So that is Creative Clubhouse. And then heart, a place to connect back to your heart, your creative purpose, and love yourself. And to me, that is the Wes Anders Inn. So you can have your own version of that in your life, but I think that those four things are super important in order for you to kind of like follow the track of making a good deal of money and a good deal of impact with your brand. So really, only by looking back have I been able to see that how I think and how I make decisions actually has a method to it. By constantly defending my own creativity, I've committed to dreams that seemed so far outside the realm of possible, yet now make up my actual life. So here's what I learned. Number one, the first thing that you need to know is that your brain is always against you. Just like my brain was against me when I was preparing for this talk, it's always trying to keep you safe. So our brain is sort of like, these lions are going to eat you if you publish that blog post. And you're kind of like, well, it seems like unlikely because there's no lions here, right? But that's what it feels like, right? Like when you're putting yourself out to the world, it feels like the same fear that you would probably have if you were having to flee a situation can sometimes flood you. And you sometimes believe that it's true, but it's usually not true. So you have to understand that your brain is against you so that when you can recognize it, you can talk yourself out of it. Number two, you must always listen to your heart. Your heart is actually a real guiding force. It really is the wisdom of where you should go next. It knows the right way, trust it. When you listen to your heart, you'll be able to define a compelling reason. A compelling reason will be so compelling that it will guide you when times get tough. So like, the thing that I do when my brain is like, but is anyone going to listen to you? I remember why I'm here. I'm like, okay, well, why am I here? And I'm here because I want you to not feel alone. I want you to feel inspired, and I want you to know that you can do anything you want to do. So as soon as I remind myself of those three things, like the fear kind of is subsiding, and I'm able to kind of clearly focus on the mission ahead. The third thing I think you should know is that thoughts are not reality. And you've got to question all of them. So this is similar to the understanding that your brain is against you, but just like the things that we accept as normal in the world are just somebody's opinion of what they believe is normal. So like the fact that like when babies are born, they wear blue if they're a boy or pink if they're a girl, that's like not a reality, right? That's a construct that someone decided that at some point. That's true everywhere around you. So I think you should be able to question everything that comes your way. And I've had to do that. Like, you'll all have to do that if you're doing something different. In creativity, I think by definition is doing something new, right? It's the creation of something that did not exist prior. So the thing you're going to have to do is combat people who are saying like, well, that's like not a normal career path, or like, how are you going to make money doing that? Or like, well, that's not how we did it last year. Like, people will ultimately want you to stay doing the same thing over and over again. And you're going to have to kind of be resilient to that and make sure you understand that like their thoughts about what you should do aren't really reality. It's just their thoughts. And so you can choose to accept them, or you can choose to kind of like move beyond them. The fourth thing that I would encourage you to do is to fail beautifully. That phrase is from a Nayara Wahid poem. And no one, honestly, who's doing things that are meaningful or exciting or scary or different in the world gets out without failing a lot. And I know that this is advice that people hear all the time, but it never feels good to fail. I think the advice may lead people to think like, oh, once you know that you should fail, it doesn't hurt if you fail. And that's like, to me, not really true. It always feels terrible to fail, and it gets less terrible because you realize that, oh, that's kind of part of the game. And some of my failures, I was going to share with you today that at that moment seemed so horrific, seem now like the exact lesson I needed to move forward and be really strong. So one of our first holiday events, we got fully shut down by the fire department. They all showed up like screaming with trucks, and like firemen were running up and down our stairways, and shoppers were like panicked, and vendors like, this is great because it's like everyone's just buying everything because they think the building's going to burn down. And I was just like, everybody calm down. And that was really terrible. I got fined $7,000 from the city of Cleveland, which we don't have just like an extra $7,000 all the time laying around. But I will tell you, I was able to not only form relationships with the fire department in a really like meaningful way, of course, and they end up now defending me all the time. And they're there at any moment when I need them. And honestly, what it teaches me more than anything is that I can do really hard things and they don't kill me. At that same holiday market, an older woman fell down the stairs and was like bleeding from her head. And I was like, oh no, now this is the worst thing that can happen. This is like the day after that. And like the firemen had to be there with me, babysitting me all weekend after that. And we all run down there, and she's like profusely apologizing to us that she like missed the last step. It wasn't like it was an unsafe environment, but like, I mean, you just kind of feel like it's your fault somehow. She ended up writing the Plain Dealer a letter about us. And I like looked at the paper and I was like, oh God. And she wrote a letter thanking everybody for taking care of her instead of saying something mean to us about how we should have been more safe, or all the thoughts that were going through my mind. A couple of my staff members, one of them like ran out telling me I was like the worst boss ever. That was a really terrible moment, I'd have to say. But now what that has led me to, that was a couple of years ago, is not only understanding that that was her version of the story and not that there's a he said, she said thing going on, but believing her story maybe wasn't necessary. But I took that on as a real challenge to become a great boss. And now I lead a team of 8 people who I don't think any of them would ever say that to me. And honestly, it wouldn't ever be true. So I've had a lot of failures that honestly, I was scared to run my business because I predicted all of those. I'm like, well, what if I have employees and they hate me? That actually happened. What if I open this event and someone gets hurt? That definitely happened. I think that my fear about what that would feel like at the time, felt so paralyzing. And then actually going through it and having come through the other side, I was like, oh, okay, I can live through anything. So let yourself fail. Number 5, making more money means you can help more people. So a lot of people that I coach, I'm also a creative business coach, and a lot of people have money stories. A lot of people don't want to charge what they're worth. A lot of people are like, can I just like give it away for free so I don't have to ever have this anxiety about if someone says no to me, right? They're like, let's just keep the price super low and it'll be just like a real deal for everybody. And then we don't have to deal with what it feels like for someone to say to you, I'm not buying that thing from you. And one of the things that does to you is that it does not help you feel valuable in your own work. It also doesn't help you make any money. And we went through I started the flea at a $0 booth fee, which is not very sustainable, FYI, if you charge nothing for what you do. But I did do it for the first month because this was a challenge, like it was a new thing, and I hadn't built value in it, right? So if we're just changing value for money, I didn't know that there was any value yet. So for me, that was totally fine. And then I incrementally increased it as I needed to as the value went up. However, it got to a point where like I got scared to charge people for things. And then the cost of the event really far exceeded what I was able to bring in, which just meant that I had to depend on my salary from another source. So basically I was running two businesses at once, and it was crazy. So we made a significant increase in booth fees this year, and that allowed me to do all these amazing things, which is like hire a bunch of people, pay myself a salary, not go broke. And this month also we were able to donate $7,500 to Ola, Ohio, and they are an organization that's dedicated to helping migrant workers and their families who are affected by the ICE raids. So my change in mentality from feeling like I couldn't charge people for my work, for what I was doing, has now turned from that to like, look how many people I can help. Look how many families get the support they need because I decided to get over myself. And yeah, I actually had a lot of vendors like message me or not come back to the flea. Not really a lot. I'd say like maybe 5%. And then all I said to them was like, that's fine. We're just not for you. Like we are for people who are here, who are super committed to themselves. And if this amount of money feels like too much for you, we're not for you. But there's so many other places for you. And I like wish you so much happiness in that endeavor. But we were able to do so many great things because we raised rates. Number 6, scarcity is the enemy of creativity. So just like I was kind of believing before, like we don't have enough money and like I can't charge vendors enough and I won't ever have enough for this. Like all of that worry and all of that anxiety took up so much creative space in my mind that like I couldn't even focus on how fun it can be to run a market that 10,000 people are coming to. And that was a really hard thing for me to kind of surpass as a small business owner, because you have to make your own money and you have to figure out how to do it. So I started a business that like I didn't know that it would work, and it grew from 1,500 shoppers who showed up at the first flea, which I was like, how did you even find us? Because I didn't really market that effectively. I didn't know how to market, but they found us. And then within 3 months, we had 10,000 shoppers. And that was a real operational crazy time. However, I never believed that the flea could like sustain me. I always thought like, well, probably next month, no one is showing up. And then like, I'll be out of a job. Like I believed that for, I think the first 2 years of the event. And my staff used to laugh at me. I had like part-time people kind of helping me here and there. Every single day before the flea, I'd be like, I just don't know if anyone is showing up. And they just would laugh at me. But I'm like, but when you are the one with everything on the line, your brain is like going to say those things to you. So you have to realize again that like those are things you're telling yourself and it's probably not true. But so I went from a business that I believed could barely support me to a business now that supports hundreds of business owners' livelihoods and costs me $50,000 a month. The flea cost me when I started just my time and maybe a couple $100 in like trash cans, and like I wasn't even pulling permitting. I was running an illegal bar operation. I was doing everything illegal. So like I wasn't really spending any money. I'm in Columbus right now, which I shouldn't say that because Columbus is where the Ohio liquor control is. So like, never ran anything illegally, just for the record. But I didn't do anything. I didn't do it right. And so now the flea, by doing it right, that's another thing that small business owners really try to avoid through scaling up. Because when you scale up and you do things right, you ultimately have to spend more money, right? You have to pay workers' comp. You have to now pay more taxes. You have to file for an LLC. You have to do all these things that if your belief is that that's just money that you can't get back, I don't know that you'll ever do it. But if you're ever going to make money, like real money, doing what you do or scale, you've just got to do those things. And so when I was able to embrace that and not be mad about it anymore, it allowed me to just be like, okay, cool. So instead of this event having to cost me $500 or $1,000 a month, it costs me $50,000 a month. How am I going to make that? And so that led me to all of the decisions that I had to make that possible. And once I believed that that was possible, my whole world opened up, and we created so much amazing creativity around vendor sales and experiences for them and shoppers and different staff members. So like the answer was always there for me, but I was so stressed out and focused on scarcity that I never saw it. I never allowed myself to see the answer. A lot of us are always looking for the answer before we're willing to take the leap, and I just don't know that that's possible. Number 7, goals alone and money don't bring happiness. So when we're kind of small business owners, we're like, oh gosh, when we have that money, or like when the market is launched, everything's going to be great. And I'll just say that like you just trade one problem for the next. That sounds like a bummer, but what it is evolution, and it's an amazing thing. And looking back on my business and seeing the growth that we've actually had, and that like I now have these 4 businesses that I always wanted, that I never thought I could have, or that always seemed like super impossible. Now looking back and seeing that they're all here, it's so amazing. And it has not come without a lot of trial. I was kind of like toying with the idea of like, or I'm always trying to talk to people and decide, should I present the real story of what it's like to run a business or get somewhere? Or should I just tell people it's like really fun? Because I really think that you need motivation and encouragement that it's going to be okay, and that it is a fun thing to do. It's really fun to like say yes to yourself. That's the thing that's really fun. Getting the flea off the ground and that having that event, it's a total pain in the ass. Like it is not like it is not fun to negotiate liquor permits and like have the police show up and shut you down and like be in constant like just fights with people over really dumb things. That part is not fun. Operationally, that stuff is not fun. But then to wake up and walk over to your market and see tens of thousands of people there supporting a creative community, knowing that you made that happen and that you said yes to yourself and you went through all of the bullshit to get there, that is so fun. And you can't trade that in for like the money that we get for the flea pales in comparison to the fact that we allow ourselves to say yes in this way. So I just encourage you to know that like you're probably already doing it, and the money and the goals are not the thing that you're actually, those are great. Those are what got you to evolve. And the evolution is what feels wonderful. And my last point, point 8, is be happy now. It'll get you there faster. So I spent most of the last 5 years being really unhappy about where I was, because I always wanted to be better, because I think we're kind of wired a little bit that way if we're creative business owners and just artists who are looking to get better or make more money or have more impact. We're sort of future focused. And I actually think that that's a super positive. But the key thing that I was missing for myself, at least, and I kind of discovered really early on this year, was that I needed to be happy now. And the reason why that was super important for me was because every day I would wake up and not like my life. And it was really hard for it's really hard for us to evolve if we can't put positive energy into our endeavors. It's really, really hard because it takes energy, right? So, and I will say that I had lots of lots of amazing moments over the last 5 years, but I used to think that like if I just pushed myself, it was through sort of like you're not good enough and you need to get better, sort of like a negative lens, that it would get me there faster, because I was taking myself very seriously. And I was like, you didn't learn QuickBooks today, so you're gonna learn it next week. Like my mentality was very much like you're never good enough for this. And yeah, it led me to create a lot of great things, but what I didn't create in the process was any sort of fulfillment for myself. It was all for everybody else. The vendors were doing great. The city was doing great. But every day I was like, none of this feels good to me. And I couldn't figure it out. And then I realized, oh, like I just need to be okay where I am right now and not, and also thank myself for doing the thing that I'm doing. And so this year I started just a very different way of living. I shut down my design business and we stopped taking design clients. And I hired a staff to do all the stuff that I didn't want to do. I figured out the money that would take to make that possible. I travel a lot. I moved into a new apartment that feels like living in a tree house. Like I started prioritizing these things, but because I had used to live in scarcity, I thought like, well, none of that is available to me. That's so luxurious to think that I could have a staff doing this for me. But it was really what I needed. And since that happened, we've been able to really grow more this year, really, than we even did in the first year. We grew just as much year to 2 years, but between 3 and 5, we were sort of stagnant. And that's because I didn't prioritize what I needed as a person to be happy and to continue to do inspiring things, because defending your creativity and the thing that you're doing is so difficult. And so you have to balance that with making yourself happy and like doing things that you need to do. So it feels like counterintuitive to like spend money on yourself in order to like then make money. Or spend time on yourself when you need extra time. It's all about time or money, right? Like those are the things that we're always like, there's just never enough of. But I now like go on walks in the morning for like 2 hours and I just walk along the beach with my dog and like you can't even imagine like the creativity and the energy that comes out of just giving that time to myself first. So I would encourage you to be happy now and then continue looking forward, but don't kind of treat yourself in a negative way. Thank you.